All right, so I just finished attending the AI4 keynote on day two, which featured Geoffrey Hinton, Fei-Fei Li, and Andrew Ng. So, I really think it was one of the best sessions I've ever been to, really because I was trying to boil down why it was so good as an overall take. And I think it's that they're not trying to sell you anything. These guys are like the godfather, godmother of AI, they call them. And of course, Andrew Ng did so much stuff, Google Brain, Coursera after that. But, these guys are just out there, they're really smart. They don't have an agenda as far as like, they're not trying to sell you something. They're not trying to make money, which is, I think, what really taints the rest of the world and the conference. But yeah, so I really just wanted to go through real quick. I took a bunch of notes. Basically, I live tweeted it. So I'm just going to go through them as I'm speaking here. And I'll do a post on LinkedIn and stuff as well. But I really found that Geoffrey Hinton, godfather of AI, they call him, he was very soft spoken, well spoken, smart, and thoughtful. He started off with a take on consciousness that was really more like a philosopher, which I loved. Of course, all the scientists and doctors and everyone else should know here that there's no scientific basis for consciousness. We can't measure it because you use consciousness to measure consciousness because we all have consciousness as a base reality. Whether or not people, I mean, that's like a deeper debate. But he started off with that. And then he went into kind of humans are better at certain things. The use cases were great to hear. Again, it was really refreshing. A lot of nuance, a lot of shades of gray in there rather than, black and white. He did start off saying, talking about call centers and saying that basically that call centers, you call them, people are poorly trained. They don't know the answers to stuff. Whereas AI can do a better job and they will know the answers to things. I find it's a little bit of a feature and not a bug to have incompetent folks on your support lines for a lot of different reasons. But yeah, like if you have people calling in to cancel, they make it really hard to cancel, but really easy to sign up. Obviously, you can use the same process for both, but from a business perspective, they want it to be annoying to cancel or even annoying to get support where you'll just kind of like give up. Insurance, medical insurance does this a lot where they'll just charge you a bunch and hope you don't call them out on it. So yeah, anyways, he was saying that AI is going to do a better job of that. But I kind of push back personally to think that the financial side, like I said, is a feature, not a bug. And people or companies want people to be uncomfortable and make money off of things like that. But anyways, he was saying that after these call center jobs are done, the people are poorly educated. They don't have a lot of options, and the jobs they can be trained for can also be trained for AI. So this called again for a bit more education, which he got into later. He talked about children will learn twice as fast with a tutor versus a teacher. So the normal class is kind of a teacher broadcasting to 30 kids. Whereas if you have a tutor one-on-one, the curiosity of the child really shines through. He called out Alpha School as an example. Apparently they use AI for basic concepts, which I think is pretty smart. At this point, the moderator, she was a journalist. I forget where she was from, but she was a journalist, and everyone kind of attacked journalism, which I love also. Journalism is complete shit today. Oh, pardon my language, but it's very polarizing. It doesn't have any knowledge of the topic. Again, that's a feature, not a bug, because people don't want to read a nuanced or watch, I guess, a nuanced take on things. They want hot takes. They want, things that agree with them. And people are more than happy to drive clicks, ads, and everything to things that they want. He also made a really good point on regulation. He was saying we can't listen to the AI industry on regulation. Like no industry wants to be regulated. Tobacco didn't want to be regulated. Oil doesn't want to be regulated. Even if you remember seatbelts in cars, the auto industry fought for decades saying you don't need seatbelts. They had doctors say seatbelts cause more injuries than saving lives. All this BS that eventually took a long time. A lot of people died before they were forced to add seatbelts. So he kind of said, don't leave it to Elon Musk or Zuckerberg for AI regulations because no industry wants to be regulated. I thought that was a really good take that I haven't really considered as a broader topic. And he also touched on, again, very polarizing things. These guys had a really nuanced take. So he touched on, content creators. Can AI engage content creators to use their content? Because right now, OpenAI, all these things are just ingesting books, volumes of everything, and you can ask it to, make me art like like Banksy, or make me Keith Haring art in the style of One Piece, and people get all this stuff, and can you license or can you regulate that? And his take was, we have this thing called agents. AI agents can easily engage content creators for licensing. So it was again like a very basic take, but nobody's talking about it, of course, because it's I guess boring or simple. But yeah, then he talked a little about open model versus open weight. It's another really good nuance that I hadn't thought of. He was against it at first, but anyways, now it's moot because that battle's lost. So I'm not going to go deeper into that. But yeah, I think it was a really good take. All of them. So that was Jeff Hinton. The second one is Andrew Ng. He really talked a lot about the rhetoric of open source models versus closed, and the fear mongering is really for financial reasons. He said it nicely and said economic reasons, but I think financial is the more accurate one. So he started off talking about the job apocalypse. You hear about it everywhere, and he was there to dispel it a little. He was saying how journalism is a hype machine that's all full of shit, and literally the journalist is sitting right next to him who writes all that shit. So as a career, so that was an interesting take. He also called out Geoffrey Hinton. Like apparently the three are all friends, but he called out Geoffrey Hinton about 10 years ago. He said radiologists won't exist, but obviously that was a inaccurate take. I think a lot of people have said that over the years. I've never agreed with it. I should do more of these hot takes online, so I have proof. But anyways, yeah, radiologist jobs still exist. Radiology is, sure, there's still interventional radiology and all these other things, but even general radiology jobs still exist. The next thing Andrew talked about was developers. It was really the birth of the full stack developer is really the biggest thing I've seen personally in development of software, with the front seat, of course, at work. But you don't really need a front end dev anymore. If you're a front end dev, there's just no role for you. You gotta learn AI to do the back end stuff, or you gotta learn the back end stuff. And yeah, because I remember back in the day living in Silicon Valley, people were like, "I'm a full stack developer." Or, we have, so that was like a flex back then. I think now it's become table stakes. There's no longer a need for a front end developer. I think front end is the one that's gone the quickest, because AI does a great job of not just mocking up a design, but they'll actually, if you're doing a web page or something, for example, they'll do the HTML and CSS, which is very impressive. He talked about the context of, sorry, he talked about humans in context versus the intelligence of AI. We're so good at a lot of stuff that AI still sucks at. One of the things is that, you know, we have the context that matters for the things that we're looking for. So a lot of times, even now, when you ask ChatGPT or Grok or whoever you're using, Claude, you ask it like, "Hey, give me some ideas for this." It'll give you a couple of like decent ideas and like five completely terrible ideas. So why does it have those terrible ideas? Because it doesn't have the context that we have in our many years, or my many years of, maybe you're younger than me, but our many years of existence, right? We've gained a ton of context that's difficult to translate. And then he talked a little bit too about regulation. So everyone had their own take on regulation. I think Andrew and Fei-Fei were more in line, but it was really that he said it's a double-edged sword. Do you let the public sector come in and do a lot of things? The invisible hand versus capitalism is a great comparison. But yeah, I think leaving it to private companies isn't a good idea. I don't know if people think that private companies have the best for us, best intentions for us. Obviously, governments are corrupt all over the world, and they don't have the best intentions either. But yeah, I would say that that's another interesting one there. He talked too about openness. I think the open versus closed debate for AI is again another false dichotomy that was created by journalism. I think Fei-Fei called it a little bit more, but I think it was a great call out. And again, I love it that the journalist was literally on stage with these people just getting roasted, because I think they need it. Not that it'll change anything, but it was still cathartic. So yeah, I was saying really openness is above both for the kind of government versus private um, uh, debate, right? So it should be amazing technology for everyone. And they ended on what'll you see in 5 years, which I forgot to say for Geoffrey Hinton. But in 5 years, Andrew, since I'm already talking about him, he said that AI will be the new electricity. Like we don't say I have an electric phone. Like it's just I have a phone. He said AI will be the new electricity. It's kind of like even if it like kind of let it disappear to the background. If cancer's cured, it's cured by AI, but you don't say AI cured cancer. You just say all these cancers have been cured. Maybe they're by drugs that were developed by AI, but it doesn't matter. It's just the background. So if there's cleaner water, safer food, all these better things, but AI won't even be mentioned because it's just a given, right? Like, the difference, people adding the little E before email, like everyone just knows what email is now, right? You don't have to say electronic mail kind of thing. And last but definitely not least, she got the most standing ovations, Fei-Fei Li. Um, yeah, I think what I really love about these three is that they have the freedom to speak the truth. Unlike most of the others, even outside of this keynote, they're not trying to sell anything. They don't have any ulterior motive. They're just kind of clean, concise insight, and of course, helps that they're really smart folks in the field. But she was probably the most nuanced of the three by a little bit over Andrew. I think Geoffrey was a little more sharp on his demarcations. But um, yeah, before I get into this one, I do want to say Jeffrey and Andrew got into a little bit of an argument about whether one worked for the other, and they kept cutting each other off and bringing up different topics of like, no, 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 like I remember your first day at Google, you worked for me. It's like I never worked for you, and I think they went back and forth, a little bit of ego from Jeffrey, and Andrew didn't like being called out so much. I think he said like Andrew's quote was really that both Jeff Dean and Geoff Hinton worked for him briefly, and Geoffrey Hinton took a big offense to that. Like I never worked for you, like kind of thing. And but anyways, I think that was a really funny moment. I mean, multiple moments because they kept breaking into the talk to keep bringing that topic up, and the journalist was just trying to kind of like, all right, let's move on. But anyways, so yeah, Fei Fei, she was really nuanced, I think. So very different from the current media, social media, and everything. She had a take on AI about how Silicon Valley is really obsessed with productivity, and productivity is like the end all be all. And she really put it in. She just reframed it into prosperity. So don't look at productivity like what prosperity can it bring. I think that was a really good take. She used education as motivation. Again, like really true. You can have the best teacher, the best student, but if the student is not motivated to learn, they will not learn. That's again, so it's just something to ensure that the learner stays motivated to learn. I was actually talking to someone at the conference about what I liked about working at Accenture, and it was really that I was always learning something. I did completely different projects. I was way out of my depth on the first day. I just come in, not know anything. People have been working in this specific, right, whether it's insurance or it's HEDIS or whatever. I come in with these experts and I learn like 80% of what's there to learn in a few weeks and deliver something. So yeah, that motivation is really important. And she just really understood the core aspects of humanity, even though she works in AI, whether it's learning, whether it's teaching. She was just brilliant. And yeah, she talked again about public investment into AI. She talked about closed companies like OpenAI, which weirdly has open in their name, but are not really open anymore. But we need universities and nonprofits and other public sector folks to get involved. I think that was another really good take. She talked about the Human Genome Project as an example, how she really said that it allowed both public and private. I believe President Clinton signed something. She said, you can look into that, but it wasn't patented and it was available to people. It would have been closed and patented. And I talked about this yesterday. I posted on LinkedIn. I didn't make a video, but I talked about it yesterday about how a lot of these AI companies at the conference are talking about aspirin. Aspirin is a natural thing, and humans turned it into medicine. That's what we're going to do with AI. I had a bunch of qualms with the things that they were saying, but I think the number one thing is rather than looking at aspirin as this great breakthrough that that humans did, I think it's more to look at things like Jonas Salk and the polio vaccine when he basically said, can you patent the sun? Like this is for all of humanity, and he just gave the vaccine for free, which is, you know, whatever your thoughts on other vaccines are. Um, the polio vaccine is pretty unanimously. I mean, I don't know actually with discourse today, but it's pretty unanimously a huge saving. I think even President Trump talks about it because he lived in the time of polio and he's praised the polio vaccine personally. But yeah. So solved with the polio vaccine. Um, there's Röntgen with the X-rays, right? He let X-rays go out. Even the oral polio vaccine was the same thing. And there was another example that I had yesterday. But yeah, I think those folks who do things for the good of humanity, they don't patent it. Oh, it was insulin. A guy, um, well, it wasn't Seven, but he didn't patent it, or he put it for like $1, so it'd be available. Of course, now people are dying in America because they don't have insulin a long time later. But yeah, that aside, um, I think those were really good things that I heard today. She also called out the kind of false dichotomy of journalism, and it's completely shallow and useless. She wasn't so brusque. She was very classy, but she talked about the pandering, how journalism just makes everything cut and dry. You can just read it real quick and be like, oh yeah, like if you don't like data centers, you can just that there's a huge crowd that doesn't like data centers. So all you do is you pander to that crowd. You don't even need new info. You don't need to have nuance about other things. You can just be like data center bad, nature good, or whatever it is, right? So yeah, that false dichotomy. And she was also asked what the world will be in 5 years, and she believed that it would be great if we were able to eradicate illiteracy with AI, which again, she got another lot of applause. Um, and the one that I left out was Geoffrey Hinton. His in 5 years, he said it'll either be radical abundance or rogue AI doing cyber attacks and messing up stuff, but not extinction. So yeah, so yeah, I felt really really motivated after this session. I really think that they did a great job, and yeah, just wanted to share that these thoughts. And I agree with a lot of the things they said. I come off online, I think, more as like an angry curmudgeon or something that I disagree or I have a lot of negativity. But I think it's only because the people who are talking like the way I'm thinking are only these folks who have nothing to lose, who are on top already. Whereas everyone else has to kind of watch what they say, whether it's for work or whatever other reasons, right? You don't want to be speaking out against large corporations or whatever. But yeah, these guys, nobody could touch them. But I don't think it's a purely kind of egocentric thing of I'm so great, no one can touch me. These guys have been able to make a name for themselves and really, I think, live up to the name by the way that they're speaking and the way that they're sharing their expertise, their knowledge, and their thoughts. So yeah, just wanted to quickly share that, and then I'm going to get back to the session. So it's about 10:30 now, so I'll be back. All right, thanks.